I walked into my local Walmart 3 weeks ago to grab a few things I always keep in the pantry. Basic stuff. Things I buy without thinking. And 2 of them were just gone. Not out of stock in a normal way. Gone. Empty shelf, no tag, no restock date. Just a gap where something used to be. I've been paying close attention to what's happening on store shelves for a while now. And I want to tell you, the pattern I'm seeing right now is different from what we saw in 2020 and 2021. This isn't panic buying. This is something quieter. And because it's quiet, most people won't notice until it's already too late. Today I'm covering 15 foods that people consistently wait too long to stock up on. Some of these are probably in your kitchen right now. Some you buy every single week. And at least one of them, you won't believe it's number 7, is going to catch you completely off guard. If you're new here, subscribe right now. This channel is about knowing what's coming before the rest of the country figures it out. Let's get into it. Item number 1, canned tomatoes. This is the one I tell everyone about first because it's so overlooked. Canned tomatoes, whole, crushed, diced, paste, are a staple in tens of millions of American homes. We use them without thinking. Pasta, soup, chili, casseroles. They're always there, so people never stock up on them. Here's the problem. Tomato crops in California and Florida, which supply the majority of the processed tomato market in the U.S., have been under serious pressure from heat and drought for multiple seasons in a row. Processing costs have gone up, prices have gone up, and smaller regional brands have quietly been reducing pack sizes or leaving retail shelves altogether. I looked this up myself after noticing that the store brand at my local grocery was about 40 cents more per can than it was 14 months ago. That doesn't sound like much until you do the math on a full pantry. We're talking a meaningful price jump on a product that hasn't changed at all. Industry data shows that canned vegetable and tomato processing capacity in the U.S. is running tight. There's no slack in the system right now. When demand spikes, and it always spikes in fall and winter, the shelves get thin fast. Buy a case now. Seriously. If you use canned tomatoes once a week, buying a case of 24 cans costs you almost nothing and protects you from whatever comes in the next 6 months. You don't want to be the person standing in the pasta aisle in November wondering why the shelves are bare. Item number 2. Rice. Especially long grain and jasmine rice is the food that people think of as permanently available, infinitely abundant, and always cheap. That assumption is getting tested right now. Global rice prices hit multi-decade highs in 2023 and haven't fully come back down. India, which is one of the world's biggest rice exporters, put export restrictions in place that disrupted supply chains across the Americas and Europe. While some of those restrictions have eased, the underlying fragility of global rice supply is real and it's documented. At the retail level, I've spoken with people who work in grocery distribution, and they've told me that long-grain white rice and jasmine rice specifically have seen increased order lead times from suppliers. That means when a store runs low, it takes longer to replenish than it used to. When I checked prices at Costco and Sam's Club last month, I noticed that the big bags of jasmine rice had gone up meaningfully compared to 18 months ago. Not catastrophically, but consistently. Here's what I recommend. If you have the storage space, a dry pantry shelf, a food-grade bucket, even just a cool closet, buy a 25-pound bag now. Rice stores for years when kept dry. There's almost no downside. And when the next supply hiccup hits, you'll have it. This is about being ahead of the curve, not panicking, just being smart. Item number 3, cooking oils, vegetable, canola, and olive. I almost didn't include this one because I talked about it over a year ago, but the situation has gotten worse, not better. Cooking oils, vegetable, canola, sunflower, and olive have all experienced significant price volatility over the past few years. The sunflower oil situation in Eastern Europe sent shockwaves through the global edible oil market. Canola supply from Canada has been affected by weather and trade friction. And olive oil is in a category of its own right now. Olive oil prices have hit historic highs due to back-to-back poor harvests in Spain, Italy, and Greece, which together produce the majority of the world's olive oil supply. In many stores, a 32-ounce bottle of decent extra virgin olive oil that cost $8 or $9 2 years ago is now $14 or $15. Some premium brands are even higher. I noticed this personally when I went to refill my kitchen supply. I reached for my usual brand and just stopped. The price tag genuinely surprised me. I went home and ordered a larger container online because the per-ounce price was significantly better. If you cook at home regularly, having a spare bottle or 2 of your main cooking oil costs you very little and protects you from a price spike or a temporary shortage. Store it in a cool, dark place. Oil keeps well for at least a year, often longer. Nobody is talking about how tight the olive oil market still is, but you now know. Item number 4. Dry beans and lentils. Dry beans might be the most underrated pantry item in America. They're cheap, incredibly nutritious, they store for years, and most people buy them only when they specifically plan a recipe. That's the wrong approach. The protein market is under real pressure right now. Meat prices have stayed elevated longer than most analysts expected. Eggs went through their own crisis. And as more Americans look for affordable protein sources, dry beans and lentils are quietly becoming more popular, which means more demand on a supply chain that wasn't built to handle a sudden surge. I've seen reports from grocery buyers who note that chickpeas, black beans, and red lentils specifically have had availability issues at the wholesale level. Nothing dramatic, but enough to cause occasional retail gaps. I looked at pricing comparisons myself over the past year and found that a 1-pound bag of dried black beans provides roughly the same protein as about a pound of ground beef at a fraction of the cost. And yet, beans are the thing that sits on the shelf waiting for the right recipe. Buy them now. Stock a few bags of different varieties. They take almost no space. They last basically forever if stored in a sealed container. And if prices on meat or other proteins continue rising, you'll already have a backup. This is one of those items that feels mundane until the day you actually need it. And on that day, you'll be very glad you bought it early. Item number 5. Canned fish, tuna, salmon, and sardines. Canned fish has a quiet crisis going on that almost nobody is paying attention to. Tuna specifically has been hit by a combination of factors: rising fuel costs for fishing fleets, tighter catch quotas in key Pacific fishing zones, and increased global demand from markets in Asia and Europe. The result is that the supply available to American retailers has tightened. Prices have gone up. And the shelf presence of mid-range and budget canned tuna brands has shrunk noticeably in some markets. I noticed this in 2 different grocery stores in my area within the same week. The shelf that used to have 8 or 10 different tuna options was down to 4 or 5. The store brands were restocked, but the mid-range name brands were spotty. Canned salmon and sardines are in a slightly better position supply-wise, but they've also seen price increases driven by fuel, processing, and shipping costs. Here's why this matters to your budget. Canned tuna is still one of the most cost-effective protein sources available. If the supply gets tighter and prices go higher, that affordable protein option gets harder to access for families who depend on it. Buy a case of whatever canned fish you actually eat. 12 cans of tuna, a dozen cans of salmon. It takes up almost no space, it lasts for years, and you'll use it. Don't wait until the shelf looks like it does in my grocery store right now. Item number 6. Pasta and egg noodles. Pasta is the kind of food that people always think will be there. It's cheap. It's everywhere. It's been on every grocery shelf for decades. That confidence is starting to look a little shaky. Pasta prices in the U.S. have risen significantly over the past 2 to 3 years due to higher wheat costs, higher energy costs for manufacturing, and the same pressures that have affected most packaged food categories. The big brands at your grocery store, Barilla, Disecco, store brands, have all adjusted prices upward, and while supply hasn't completely broken down, the inventory buffers that retailers used to carry have gotten thinner. What really caught my attention was egg pasta and egg noodles specifically. The egg price crisis of the past year hit this category hard. Egg noodles, which use actual dried egg in the pasta, saw supply disruptions at several manufacturers because of the cost of eggs. I spoke with someone who works in food distribution, not going to say more than that, and they mentioned that the pasta and noodle category has been one of the trickiest to keep consistently stocked over the past 18 months. It's not that it disappears, it's that the variety narrows and the prices inch up in ways that add up over time. Keep a good supply of the pasta shapes you actually use. Spaghetti, penne, rotini, whatever your family eats. A few extra boxes costs almost nothing and gives you real flexibility if prices spike or supply gets thin again this winter. Item number 7. Baby formula and infant nutrition products. I need to pause the food list for just a second to talk about this one, because it's the item I promised you would be surprising. This one affects a specific group of people, parents of infants and young toddlers. But if that's you, You need to hear this. Baby formula supply in the United States has been structurally fragile since the 2022 crisis. Most people assume that problem was fixed and it's been fine ever since. That's not entirely accurate. The manufacturing base for infant formula in the U.S. is still heavily concentrated in just a handful of facilities. There are still limited import options in the case of a domestic supply issue, and the warning signs that existed before 2022 haven't all been addressed. I looked at the industry reporting on this closely over the past few months. The FDA and major manufacturers have taken steps to diversify and add capacity, but the supply chain for formula remains one of the most vulnerable in the American grocery ecosystem. Any disruption, a recall, a weather event affecting a key facility, a raw ingredient shortage, can cause regional gaps fast. If you have a baby at home, this is not an item to buy week to week. Talk to your pediatrician about what a reasonable backup supply looks like. Most doctors now acknowledge that parents should keep at least a 2 to 4 week supply on hand. That wasn't common advice before 2022. It is now. This is about protecting your child, not about being paranoid. That's the difference. Item number 8. Frozen vegetables, especially broccoli and green beans. Frozen vegetables don't get talked about enough in these conversations, and I think it's because they feel like a backup option. Something you buy when fresh is too expensive or inconvenient. Here's the thing, they are the backup option, and when shelves get tight, that backup matters a lot. Frozen vegetable supply has been affected by several compounding factors. Energy costs for cold chain logistics have increased significantly. Water availability for irrigation in the western U.S., which grows a huge portion of the vegetables that end up frozen, has been affected by persistent drought conditions. And processing plant capacity has not kept up with demand growth. Broccoli and green beans specifically have had notable supply fluctuations at the retail level. Birdseye and Green Giant, the two dominant brands in most grocery stores, have both had SKU reductions in certain markets, meaning fewer variety options even when core products are available. When I checked my local Kroger banner store last month, the frozen broccoli section was about half the size it used to be. Some of that is a store reset decision. Some of it is supply. It's hard to tell from the outside, but the pattern is real. Keep a few extra bags of your most used frozen vegetables in your freezer. They're cheap, they last for a year or more frozen, and they're nutritionally excellent. If fresh produce prices spike this summer or fall, and they might, you'll be ready. Item number 9. Canned soup, especially name brands. Canned soup is one of those items that people reach for when they're sick, when they're tired, or when the budget is tight, which means demand spikes exactly when supply chains are already under pressure, during cold and flu season, during economic stress periods, and during weather events. Campbell's, Progresso, and store-brand soups have all seen price increases that have pushed canned soup out of its traditional always cheap category. A can of Campbell's Chunky that was $1.40 or $1.50 2 years ago is often now $2 or more at non-sale prices. Beyond price, I've noticed that certain popular flavors, chicken noodle, tomato, vegetable beef, are the first to go during any kind of demand surge, and they take longer to come back than they used to because manufacturers have trimmed their production schedules to reduce inventory costs. I went through a period about 6 months ago where I was buying soup fairly regularly for a family member who was recovering from an illness. I was making 2 or 3 grocery runs a week, and I consistently found the shelves thin on the exact flavors we needed. It was a frustrating lesson in not waiting until you need something to buy it. Buy a case of soups you actually use before cold and flu season. Don't wait until October. Buy it now. Put it in a pantry, a cabinet, wherever you keep extras. You will absolutely use it, and you'll be glad it's already there. Item number 10. Flour, all-purpose and bread. Flour is the backbone of home cooking and baking, and it's been on a quiet upward price trend that a lot of people are still in denial about. Wheat prices globally have been elevated and volatile since the disruptions in Eastern Europe that began in 2022. American wheat prices have been somewhat insulated, but the effects have filtered through to retail flour pricing. A 5-pound bag of all-purpose flour from Gold Medal or King Arthur that cost under $2 a few years ago is often $3 or more now, depending on where you shop. What concerns me more than the price is the supply pattern. During any kind of demand event, a bad weather forecast, an economic anxiety cycle, a viral social media trend about bread baking, flour is one of the first things that disappears from shelves. We saw this vividly in 2020, and the restocking after a depletion event takes weeks, not days. I bake at home fairly regularly, and I started keeping a 25-pound bag of all-purpose flour as a baseline about 2 years ago. I rotate through it. I'm never caught without it. The cost difference between buying a 5-pound bag every couple of weeks and buying a large bag every few months is actually meaningful over the course of a year. If you bake even occasionally, having a good flour supply on hand is just smart. Store it in a sealed container to keep pests out and it'll stay fresh for well over a year. Item number 11. Peanut butter. Peanut butter is so American, so consistent, and so reliable that it's almost invisible, which is exactly why it catches people off guard. Peanut crop yields in the southeastern U.S. have been affected by drought and heat stress in recent growing seasons. The peanut butter market is dominated by a small number of processors: J.M. Smucker, which makes both Jif and Smucker's brand, and Conagra, which makes Peter Pan. And when those facilities face any kind of disruption, the entire retail category feels it. There was a recall and facility issue a couple of years ago that briefly affected peanut butter supply. It passed, but it was a reminder of how concentrated the production really is. And with crop pressure continuing, there are real questions about whether supply can stay comfortably ahead of demand in the next year or two. On top of that, peanut butter prices have already crept up. A jar that was $3.50 is often $4.50 or $5 now. That's a quiet 40% increase on a pantry staple that most people haven't noticed because they buy it one jar at a time. Buy 2 or 3 jars next time you're at the store. Keep one in the pantry as a backup. Peanut butter lasts a year or more unopened. It's calorie-dense, it's protein-rich, it's versatile, and when supply gets thin, it's always in the first wave of products that sells out. Item number 12. Coffee, ground and whole bean. I know, coffee feels like a luxury, but for most American households, it's a daily necessity with real budget implications, and the coffee market is in a genuinely difficult moment right now. Coffee-growing regions, primarily Brazil, Vietnam, and Colombia, have experienced significant weather disruptions over the past several years. El Niño and La Niña cycles have hit key growing areas hard. Brazilian crop reports in particular have been concerning, with multiple below-average harvest years in sequence. This has pushed coffee commodity prices to levels not seen in many years. Those price increases are now working their way through the supply chain to retail. Brands like Folgers, Maxwell House, and Starbucks packaged coffee have all raised prices. The value ground coffee that used to be under $8 for a large can is now often $12 or $13. Premium and specialty coffees have gone even higher. I'm someone who makes coffee at home every day. When I looked at my monthly coffee spend compared to 2 years ago, the number genuinely surprised me. I'm spending meaningfully more for the same amount of coffee. If you're a daily coffee drinker, buying an extra large container or two when you see it at a good price is just smart money management. Coffee stores well. Vacuum-sealed cans and resealable bags hold freshness for a long time. Buy ahead and lock in today's price before the next round of increases hits. Item number 13. Salt, sugar, and basic baking ingredients. These are items so basic that nobody thinks about them, and that's exactly the problem. Salt, sugar, baking soda, baking powder, vanilla extract. These foundational baking and cooking ingredients have all seen price increases that don't get discussed because each individual item still seems cheap. But when you add them up, the cost of stocking a working pantry has gone up significantly. Vanilla extract in particular has been on a wild price journey. Madagascar vanilla crop disruptions from several years ago drove extract prices through the roof. Those have come down somewhat, but pure vanilla extract is still much more expensive than it was 5 or 6 years ago. The cheap imitation vanilla is back in reach, but if you prefer the real thing, buying a larger bottle now makes financial sense. Sugar prices have been elevated globally due to supply pressures and biofuel competition for sugarcane. Salt is still cheap, but the specialty salts, kosher salt, sea salt, that a lot of home cooks now prefer, have seen price movement. Here's what I do. Every few months I check the prices on my most used baking ingredients, and I stock up on anything that seems to be priced well at that moment. It's not dramatic. I'm not buying years' worth of anything. I'm just making sure I'm not caught in a moment where something is expensive and I need it today. It's a habit worth developing. These ingredients cost almost nothing to store, and they last a very long time. Item number 14. Oats and oat-based products. Oats have had a quiet popularity surge over the past several years that has real supply implications. Between the rise of overnight oats, oat milk, oat-based granolas, and just the general health food trend pushing people toward whole grains, demand for oat products has grown substantially. At the same time, oat crop yields in Canada, the dominant source of oats for the North American market, have been variable. Bad crop years push prices up across the entire oat product category, from bulk rolled oats to Quaker Oats canisters to the instant oat packets that families buy for quick breakfasts. I noticed this year that store-brand rolled oats at Walmart and Target had gone up in price more than I expected. Still affordable by any measure, oats are one of the best calorie per dollar foods available, but the trend is moving in the wrong direction. What's more interesting is the availability pattern. During any kind of supply stress, a bad harvest, a transportation issue, a demand spike, oats tend to sell out fast because they're seen as the affordable, healthy backup option. Which means everyone reaches for them at the same time. Buy a large container of rolled oats now. Keep it sealed in a cool place. Oats last for years in good storage conditions. They're versatile, nutritious, and filling. And at their current price, buying ahead is still a genuine bargain. Item number 15. Frozen fruit, especially berries. I'm ending with this one because it's the item that snuck up on me most personally, and I think it'll resonate with a lot of you. Frozen berries, blueberries, strawberries, mixed berry blends, are a category that has quietly become a significant household expense. A 12 or 16-ounce bag of frozen blueberries that was $3 or $4 a few years ago is now $5, $6, or even $7 at many grocery stores. That's a 50 to 75% price increase on a product that millions of families put in smoothies, oatmeal, and yogurt every single day. The reason is a combination of factors. Berry growing is labor-intensive. Labor costs have risen sharply. The farms that supply frozen fruit processors are dealing with input cost increases on fertilizer, fuel, and water, and cold chain logistics costs have not come back down to pre-pandemic levels. I was making smoothies every morning for a while, and when I actually added up what I was spending on frozen berries weekly, it genuinely changed how I was shopping. I started watching for sales more carefully and stocking up when I found a good price. Here's what I want you to take away from this. Frozen fruit keeps for a long time, a year or more in a good freezer. When you find it on sale, buy multiples. Costco and Sam's Club often have the best price per ounce on large bags. And if you have any kind of outdoor space, even a small chest freezer is one of the best investments a budget-conscious family can make right now. The ability to buy and store food at a good price is a real financial advantage. Don't wait until the price goes up again before you act. Here's what I want you to notice about every single item on this list. None of these are exotic foods. None of them are specialty products that only some people use. Canned tomatoes, rice, cooking oil, pasta, peanut butter, coffee. These are the foods that are in virtually every American kitchen. The foods people buy without thinking. The foods people assume will always be there at roughly the price they remember. That assumption is the problem. What I've described today isn't a conspiracy or a prediction of collapse. It's just the math of a supply chain that's under real, documented pressure from climate disruptions, energy costs, labor costs, and trade dynamics that none of us control. These pressures are real. The price increases are real. The occasional shelf gaps are real. And the people who end up in the best position are the ones who saw it coming and acted quietly before everyone else figured it out. You don't need to buy a year's worth of anything. You don't need a bunker. You just need to be 6 to 8 weeks ahead of yourself on the things you use every day. That's a manageable, affordable strategy that protects your family and your budget. Most people will wait until they're standing in front of an empty shelf, or until the price has gone up another 30%, before they change their behavior. You're not going to do that. Because you watch this video and you understand what's actually happening. That's the difference between being reactive and being prepared. If this video gave you something useful, please hit the subscribe button right now. Every week I'm covering what's changing in the grocery market, what's worth buying, what's overpriced, and what's quietly disappearing from store shelves. You don't want to miss it. Leave me a comment and tell me which item on this list surprised you the most. I read every single one, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself and your family. That's what this is all about.